They noticed your strength from the very beginning, even before you noticed it yourself. Narcissists are drawn to people who shine, people with inner power, identity, autonomy, people who carry their own light. And that light in you, the calm confidence, the grounded presence, it didn't just attract them, it intimidated them, because narcissists don't want a partner, they want a reflection, someone who revolves around them, not someone who stands on their own feet. According to many psychologists, narcissists fear independence, because independence means they can't fully control you. It means you have a life outside their influence. It means you can walk away. And that possibility terrifies them. They want admiration. They want compliance. They want emotional fuel. But your strength, your clarity, your stability, these things expose what they hide from the world and from themselves. Your strength didn't threaten them because it was too much. It threatened them because it was something they could never fully possess, or dim, or rewrite. So in this first moment of the journey, remember this: your strength was never the problem. Your strength was the power they couldn't control, and that alone was enough to scare them. When your strength begins to show, the narcissist feels something they work their whole life to avoid: fear. Not fear of you hurting them, not fear of you leaving suddenly, but fear of losing the power they believe they deserve. Narcissists carry a fragile ego behind their mask, a delicate self-image that collapses the moment reality does not bend to them. So when you stand firm, when you don't react, when you stay calm, they feel it as a threat to their control, a threat to their illusion, a threat to the version of you they tried to create. Psychologists describe this moment as narcissistic injury, a deep emotional wound that comes from not being worshipped, not being obeyed, not being the center anymore. Your strength becomes proof of something they cannot stand. You don't depend on them. You don't fear their silence. You don't crumble when they pull away. And that is terrifying to someone who depends on emotional dominance. This is why they react so strongly when you regain your power. They may grow colder, more irritated, more controlling, more desperate for your attention, because deep down, your strength reminds them of their weakness. Your independence reminds them of their emptiness. Your clarity reminds them of their chaos. Your boundaries remind them of everything they cannot control. And that is the moment their fear becomes visible. Not through vulnerability, but through manipulation, through anger, through guilt, through silent treatment, through emotional pressure. They're not reacting to who you are. They're reacting to what your strength represents. The beginning of the end of their control. When you begin to rise, when your voice grows steady again, when your boundaries return, the narcissist feels the shift immediately, and they panic. Not with tears, not with honesty, but with strategy. Because a narcissist doesn't respond to your strength with respect. They respond with tactics. Psychologists often describe these reactions as control maneuvers, attempts to pull you back into the emotional space they once ruled. It starts small. A subtle criticism, an unexpected coldness, a sudden distance. Then it escalates. The guilt, the comparisons, the silent treatment, the emotional withdrawal. Not because they stopped caring, but because they feel your power returning. Your strength threatens their identity. Your clarity threatens their control. Your calm threatens their chaos. So they try to shake you, make you question yourself, make you doubt your worth, make you forget who you were before them. Because if you stand tall, they lose access to the version of you they depended on. They once admired your glow, then consumed it, and now fear it. Your rising exposes the game. Your peace breaks the illusion. Your self-awareness ruins the manipulation, and they feel it deeply, desperately. This is why the narcissist reacts with more pressure, more confusion, more emotional punishment. Not because you changed, but because they did not expect you to wake up. When your strength returns, their control begins to collapse, and they will do anything to stop that collapse. But here is the truth they can't accept. You are not who you were at the beginning. You no longer fall for the same words. You no longer confuse intensity with love. You no longer mistake their chaos for passion. You are rising, and they're terrified of what that means. This is the moment everything changes. Not because the narcissist changes, but because you do. You begin to realize something powerful. Your strength isn't a threat. Your strength is protection. Not the kind that attacks, but the kind that stands firm, grounded, stable, untouchable. Psychologists often say that a narcissist fears what they cannot control, and nothing is harder for them to control than a person who knows who they are. When you stop explaining yourself, they lose their leverage. When you stop reacting, they lose their power. When your silence is calm, instead of wounded, they panic. Because your strength removes their fuel. So, how do you turn your strength into protection? You set boundaries, and keep them. You speak clearly without apologizing for existing. You stop negotiating with manipulation. You stop shrinking yourself to avoid conflict. You stop allowing their emotions to dictate your peace. You understand that their chaos is not yours to fix. Their moods are not your responsibility. Their anger is not your burden. Their emptiness is not your job to fill. Strength is not aggression. Strength is clarity. And clarity is what breaks their illusion. When you stand firm, their games stop working. When you remain calm, their chaos loses impact. When you stop justifying yourself, their need for dominance collapses. They will still try, through guilt, through silence, through pressure, through emotional manipulation. But now, you see through it. You're no longer reacting from fear. You're responding from power. Your strength becomes a shield, not to fight them, but to protect yourself. Because the moment you choose yourself, the narcissist loses the one thing they depended on, your compliance, and that is when your strength becomes your freedom. There comes a moment when you finally see the role you were placed in. Not a partner, not an equal, but a source, a provider of stability, an emotional anchor for someone who refused to carry their own weight. Narcissists choose strong people, because strong people hold everything together. And without realizing it, you became the one who soothed their storms, absorbed their moods, softened their anger, held their chaos, and carried the emotional load of two people. But something shifts. When your strength returns, you step out of that silent role. The role you never agreed to, but somehow lived inside. And the moment you step out, the narcissist feels it. Not because you shout, not because you argue, but because your energy changes. You stop waiting for their approval. You stop bending to their moods. You stop sacrificing your joy to protect their ego. You stop dimming your lights so they won't feel small. You reclaim your friendships, your voice, your space, your solitude, your dreams, your identity, and they feel the loss of power instantly. Because narcissists cannot tolerate when someone they tried to control begins to live for themselves again. Your life becoming bigger means their influence becomes smaller. Your peace returning means their hold weakens. Your identity strengthening means the old dynamic collapses. They may guilt trip you. They may get angry. They may try to pull you back with charm, promises, or emotional pressure. But you're no longer the person who breaks under that. You see the pattern. You see the manipulation. You see the truth. And the truth is simple. You were never meant to be their emotional caretaker. You were never meant to hold their world together. You were never meant to live in the shadows of someone else's insecurity. Stepping out of that role is the beginning of becoming yourself again. And nothing scares a narcissist more than you realizing you never needed them in the first place. There comes a moment when everything becomes clear. A moment when you finally see that the strength they feared was the strength that would set you free. They were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing control. Afraid of losing access to your peace, your empathy, your stability, your light. Because your light kept them standing, and your silence kept them powerful. And your softness allowed them to feel big. But the day you rise, the day you reconnect with yourself, everything changes, and they feel it. Not because you announced it, not because you argued, but because your energy no longer bends to theirs. You see through the illusion now. You see through the manipulation. You see through the charm and the chaos. And for the first time, you see yourself, your strength, your worth, your clarity, your identity. You no longer apologize for existing. You no longer shrink to keep the peace. You no longer carry what was never yours to hold. And that is what terrifies the narcissist the most. Because once you stand in your truth, they lose access to the version of you that kept them powerful. They lose access to your confusion, to your doubt, to your guilt, to your fear. And without those things, they no longer have control. This is the end of their influence. But it is also the beginning of your freedom. You step into silence, and it feels different now. Not empty, not lonely, but peaceful, sacred, yours. The peace they once drained now returns to you, fully, quietly, powerfully. And that return is the moment your new life begins. Not controlled, not manipulated, not diminished, but free, whole, unshaken. Your strength is no longer something they can take. It is something you finally claim. And when you claim it, nothing about them can touch you again.